A dying serpent forcibly abducted a groom in order to continue its lineage. Was just about to enter his bridal chamber. It transformed into his likeness and completed the wedding night on his behalf. After spending a night entwined with the bride, serpent silently returned the groom. It even implanted a false memory of the wedding night for him. Thus as time passed, the woman unknowingly began to show signs of pregnancy. My mother joyfully thought this was thanks to my father. But when I was born, she realized what it meant to want to cry but be unable to. My father fainted on the spot from shock, because the child they had eagerly awaited was a massive snake egg. Only my experienced grandfather remained calm. He cracked the egg open and found me, with a birthmark shaped like a serpent. Facing this strange scene, my grandfather wasn't frightened but thrilled. He declared it a true dragon protected by 100 snakes. And my parents regained consciousness. My grandfather held me and shared the good news. You two have done well. Our Chen family has an heir now. My mother lay in bed confused. Wasn't it a snake egg I gave birth to yesterday? Hearing this, Grandpa chuckled. He brought me over to show my parents. There was a chubby boy inside that egg. My father stepped back in fear when he saw me. We can't keep this child. Who knows, he might be a demon reborn into our family. Just looking at him could give me nightmares. Grandpa was furious at his words, glaring. Why shouldn't we keep this child? It's only a serpent-shaped birthmark on his body. My mother was equally reluctant. She didn't even dare to hold me. What was even more outrageous? The next morning my parents quietly left with their belongings. From then on it was just Grandpa and me. He raised me by reading fortunes and predicting water and wind. His skills kept us going as I grew up. Grandpa often said my fate was unique. Before you turn 19 you'll be plagued by peach blossom calamity. If you don't stay away from the opposite sex, disaster could strike. It might even endanger your life. I knew Grandpa's abilities well. I kept his warning deeply in mind. But when I met Lu Ruyan, the nightmare began. Lu Ruyan was the most beautiful girl in our village. She was very beautiful. That day while I was eating lunch, Lu Ruyan rushed in looking incredibly anxious. At that moment Lu Ruyan's lips were purple like she was in terrible pain. She said she had gone swimming in the river and had been bitten by a green pit viper on her way back. Panicked, she came to find my grandpa to remove the poison. This snake's venom is very potent. If untreated within a few minutes it could be deadly. Taking her to the hospital wouldn't be fast enough. But Grandpa wasn't home. We learned he had gone to a neighboring village for a funeral. Hearing this, Lu Ruyan's heart sank. After a moment of thought she spoke to me, breathing heavily. Changsheng, quick, carry me to the bed. I didn't understand what she meant, but I carried her to my bedroom. As soon as I put her on the bed she looked pained, and her body began trembling uncontrollably. Changsheng, help me take my asterisk off. I swallowed hard at her words. Lu Ruyan had the looks and the figure. No man in Niutu village didn't want to undress her, but no one knew that Lu Ruyan had feelings only for me. She had confessed to me twice already, but I had turned her down both times. Grandpa had warned me not to get involved with women before 19. Otherwise I'd fall under the peach blossom calamity. Thinking of this, I looked at Lu Ruyan and said irritably, "You're in grave danger, close to dying from poison. And you're thinking about that? Just tell me where the snake bit you. I'll get the poison out." Hearing this, Lu Ruyan blushed deeply. "Changsheng, I didn't mean anything by it. Bite is on my thigh." Her words left me dumbfounded. I thought, that viper sure knew where to bite. But her life was at stake. I didn't have time to think of anything else. I immediately removed her asterisk and began extracting the venom. Given the location, some contact was inevitable during the process. This feeling was practically killing me. As for Lu Ruyan, her reaction was even more intense. She looked at me with those big watery eyes. "Changsheng, I can't control myself when you do this." Her words were really getting to my nerves. Clearly she was up to no good. I held back my impulses and kept drawing out the poison for 3 or 4 minutes. Finally I got all the venom out of Lu Ruyan's leg. Then I rummaged through Grandpa's medical kit and found an antidote for snake venom. I applied it to her wound. After I finished I looked at Lu Ruyan and swallowed hard. "You should be fine now. Let me help you back home to rest." Lu Ruyan sat up and looked at me excitedly. "Changsheng, I know you like me too. This is a rare chance, so let me be your girlfriend." Saying that, she grabbed my hand and started to get closer. In that moment I felt a wave of heat rush from my feet to my head. And Lu Ruyan was leaning in even closer. Seeing this, I quickly stepped back. I also pulled my hand away. Lu Ruyan looked at my reaction, and a look of disappointment filled her eyes. "Changsheng, what are you doing? Don't you like me?" I quickly waved my hands and took a deep breath. "Ruyan, I really do like you. But you have to give me time until I turn 19. This is what my grandpa told me." Hearing this, Lu Ruyan was still a bit sad and said, "You should at least do something. Even a quick test drive would be fine." Her words made my mouth go dry. I quickly turned and ran out of the bedroom. I lit a cigarette to calm my nerves. At the same time I thought, a guy needs to protect himself when he's out and about. Just then I saw 5 villagers carrying a pitch-black coffin approaching. Someone in the village had passed away. Then I noticed my childhood friend Song Kwanming helping with the coffin. His eyes were red and full of tears. He looked very sad. Seeing this I looked at him in confusion and asked, "Did Grandma Lu pass away?" Hearing my words Song Kwanming glared at me angrily. "Changsheng, what are you saying? My grandmother is perfectly fine. How could you curse her like that?" I looked confused at his words. "Then why are you so sad?" At this moment Song Dagu standing nearby said, "Changsheng, don't make random guesses. It's your Uncle Dajan's daughter Lu Rian who passed away." Hearing this I was stunned. "Are you sure you have the right person? Is this some kind of joke?" Song Dagu nodded and sighed. "Lu Rian drowned in the river at the village entrance. Your Uncle Dajan went to call her for lunch, and found her body floating on the river." Hearing this I was completely in disbelief. Lu Rian was just at my house. I just helped her suck out snake venom. How could she have drowned in the river? At this moment Song Kwanming with tears in his eyes said, "I wish this nightmare wasn't real. Rian was my dream girl. If it weren't for my father I'd have been with her already." As he spoke Song Kwanming broke down in tears. Seeing him so heartbroken, a feeling of unease grew within me. Soon the coffin reached the village entrance. Many villagers were gathered there, and even a funeral altar had been set up. Looking around I immediately saw Lu Rian's parents, holding a body wrapped in straw mats crying out loud. Seeing this I clenched my teeth and rushed over to lift the white cloth. When I saw the face of the deceased, I felt my mind go numb. How is this possible? Looking at Lu Rian's body I felt a mix of emotions, and my eyes filled with sorrowful tears. But at that moment I saw Lu Rian suddenly open her eyes, staring at me fiercely, her eyes almost bulging out. She even raised the corners of her mouth and smiled at me. I was terrified and fell to the ground in shock. Seeing this Song Dagu walked over and said angrily, "You're the grandson of old Master San. Don't embarrass him like this." I just saw Lu Rian open her eyes and smile at me. Before I could finish, I saw Lu Rian's body lying peacefully on the straw mat. Her eyes closed as if they'd never opened. Could I have imagined it? At this moment Song Dagu stepped into the crowd, and asked all the young people and children to leave. There are many taboos when holding a funeral. I went back home, gathered my courage and entered my bedroom. There was no sign of Lu Rian's spirit on the bed. I wiped the cold sweat off my forehead, and finally felt relieved, but parts of the bed sheets were damp, and a faint fragrance lingered. It was the scent of Lu Rian. There was no doubt that my experience was real. Thinking this I quickly grabbed some paper money and 3 incense sticks, and burned them for Lu Rian facing the village entrance. Lu Rian's spirit must have visited me, because I had inadvertently offended her. Burning some paper money should help, but I was too naive about the situation. As night fell I finished dinner and lay down to rest. In the middle of the night the sound of my chickens woke me up. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was already midnight. According to Grandpa, hearing chickens crow at midnight is not a good sign. I frowned, got up and splashed some cold water on the co-op. The chickens quieted down instantly. Yawning I was just about to go back to bed, when suddenly the front door began to knock. I didn't think much of it, and immediately opened the door. I looked around but saw no one there. "Who's knocking?" I called out a few times at the door, but there was no answer. Only the faint sound of Lu Rian's parents grieving echoed intermittently from the darkness. Scared I shrank back, hurriedly shut the door and went back to bed. But as soon as I lay down and tossed a bit, I suddenly felt like I was holding someone. Half asleep I even touched their head. In that moment I opened my eyes. The person in my arms was Lu Rian's spirit, and she was staring straight at me with piercing eyes. Meeting her gaze felt like being struck by lightning. My mind went blank. I never imagined that Lu Rian's spirit would come back to find me again. At that moment Lu Rian smiled brightly and said, "Changsheng, you're awake?" As soon as I realized what was happening I pushed her away, scrambled off the bed and tried to run out of the room. No matter how hard I tried I couldn't open the door. Soon I felt a cold wind coming from behind. Before I could turn around a pale hand rested on my shoulder. It lifted me up like a little chick, and dragged me back to the bed. Lu Rian looked at me excitedly and said, "Changsheng, I don't want to wait anymore. Tonight I'm taking you with me." Her words made my eyes widen in shock. Just as I tried to struggle, a strong desire overwhelmed me. It shot up from my feet to my head, clouding my mind. To save everyone from too many details, let's skip over the repetitive parts. When I woke up it was already the next afternoon. As I tried to get up from the bed, I felt completely drained. My body felt like it was falling apart. Looking down I saw bite marks all over me. Scenes from the previous night flooded my mind. Lu Ruyan knew quite a lot. And she nearly drained me of all my energy. As I thought back, I remembered Lu Ruyan saying she'd come again tonight. She even said she'd teach me something new. If she came back tonight I wouldn't survive in my current state. I gritted my teeth and clenched my fists, resting for another half hour to regain my strength. When I finally got up my face showed no fear. Being bullied by Lu Ruyan like this, it was just too much to bear. With this resolve I went to Grandpa's study, and took down his peach wood sword. Holding this weapon gave me confidence. After being worn out by Lu Ruyan all night, I made a hearty meal with 3 eggs to recover. When I was full it was already past 9 at night. I lay on the sofa watching TV, waiting for Lu Ruyan to show up. She was punctual. At 11:30 the chickens and ducks in their coop began to stir. Just then, a gust of cold wind blew open my front door with a bang. In the next second Lu Ruyan stepped into my house. I noticed that after last night, the aura of cold energy around her was even stronger than before. Lu Ruyan's gaze landed on me. Changsheng, you were waiting for me in the living room? I stood up from the sofa facing this ghost. I've been waiting for you all night. You promised to teach me a new skill tonight, and I'm really looking forward to it. Hearing my words Lu Ruyan nodded in satisfaction. Let's go to the bedroom quickly. I'll show you what real happiness feels like. Before she could finish I raised the peach wood sword and swung it toward her. Experience? How about this experience? Now die. But to my surprise Lu Ruyan just raised her hand and caught the sword mid-swing. With a powerful grip she snatched it from my hand. With a snap, she broke the peach wood sword in half and threw it to the floor. Seeing this I froze in shock. This peach wood sword of Grandpa's was made from century-old peach wood, capable of vanquishing ghosts and demons with great power. How could Lu Ruyan be strong enough to catch it by hand? I am the village beauty Lu Ruyan. Every man in the village longs for me, but I gave no one a chance. I only wanted to be with you. Even after death I wanted to be yours. But you Chen Changsheng, you ungrateful fool tried to kill me instead. Her tone grew murderous as she spoke, and her face twisted with anger. Frightened I forced a smile and said, Ruyan, calm down. It's not what you think. I really do like you. I was just joking around earlier. Lu Ruyan sneered coldly. Joking? If I hadn't swapped out your grandpa's peach wood sword, I would have died from that strike. You really think I'm that foolish? Hearing this I was instantly furious. I couldn't believe that Grandpa's peach wood sword had been swapped out by Lu Ruyan. Her cunning was impressive, but how could she be so intelligent? Having only died 2 days ago? Spirits like hers are usually formed from resentment, and only develop human-like intelligence after decades or even a century. But Lu Ruyan had only been dead for 2 days. Just then Lu Ruyan lunged at me, knocking me to the ground. She pinned my hands above my head. Chen Changsheng, tonight I'll show you what it feels like to want to cry but be unable to. I struggled desperately, and if looks could kill, this woman would have died 1,000 times over. But the more I struggled the more excited Lu Ruyan became. Seeing my desperate expression she laughed maniacally. Just as I closed my eyes ready to save everyone some data by skipping details, the door to the room suddenly burst open. A figure with white hair rushed inside. It was Grandpa. He looked at Lu Ruyan sitting on me, and his face turned dark with rage. Don't you dare harm my grandson. She doesn't act like a newly deceased spirit at all. As he spoke, Grandpa charged forward wielding his peach wood sword. If I wasn't mistaken, that sword Grandpa held was the very one that Lu Ruyan had swapped out. Lu Ruyan's face turned pale. She screamed in terror, scrambling to get up and run. But Grandpa wasn't about to let her escape. He swung the peach wood sword striking her. Lu Ruyan let out a painful cry, and flew 2 meters across the room. She stood up glaring viciously at Grandpa. Chen Sanye, you can't protect your grandson forever. One day I'll drain him dry. Just wait to bury him. With these ominous words, Lu Ruyan turned into a cloud of black smoke and vanished. Grandpa quickly came to my side glaring at me. Lu Ruyan's been dead for only 2 days. Why has her spirit set its sights on you? Does her death have something to do with you? Hearing this I felt more wrong than Doi. Lu Ruyan drowned in the river. How could it possibly involve me? She confessed to me twice but I rejected her both times. I guess I became her obsession. Looking at Grandpa I continued. She came to me right after she died and haunted me. Grandpa's face turned red with anger when he heard this. Why didn't you call me as soon as this happened? Don't you realize that the dark energy around you is heavier than death? I replied in frustration. I thought I could handle her since she'd just died. But I didn't expect that she'd steal your peach wood sword ahead of time. Grandpa took a deep breath and said, actually Lu Ruyan now has the power of a century-old ghost. And it's all because of the river at the village entrance. Grandpa took a couple of puffs from his old pipe and started telling me about the river. 60 years ago, the river at our village entrance was used as a mass burial site. You can imagine the level of resentment built up in those waters. For years Grandpa has been trying to purify the river's resentment. But today, after returning from a funeral, he noticed the river's resentment was completely gone. That's when he knew something was wrong. And when he saw Lu Rian, he realized the truth. All that resentment had entered her body. Hearing this, I panicked. No wonder Lu Rian had become so terrifying. Grandpa took a couple more puffs and continued. Lu Rian's extreme yin constitution is the perfect vessel for resentment. Right now she's only a century-old ghost. But as she absorbs more of that resentment, her power will keep growing. Once she fully absorbs the river's resentment, it won't take long before she transforms into a terrifying ghost king. At this point Grandpa showed me the broken handle of his peach wood sword. I don't have the strength to fight a century-old ghost. Earlier I was just bluffing. Looking at the broken sword handle, my face went pale. I thought Grandpa could easily defeat Lu Rian with his skills. But who would have thought she'd already become a century-old ghost? It's only now that I truly understand just how terrifying the peach blossom curse can be. There's no hope for me to escape it tonight. To die so young at the hands of an evil ghost, it's really hard to accept. At that moment Grandpa patted my shoulder and smiled. Don't be afraid, child. We're not at her mercy just yet. After saying this, Grandpa went back to the study to prepare. When he returned, he was carrying a bundle. Seeing this, I looked at him in confusion. Grandpa, are we going somewhere? Grandpa nodded, closed the door, glanced around and led me toward the edge of the village. It was the dead of night. Going out at this hour was very dangerous. Who knew if Lu Rian was lurking in the shadows waiting? Grandpa stayed vigilant, holding a yellow talisman in his hand, likely in case Lu Rian suddenly appeared. I followed closely, barely daring to breathe. Grandpa must have had a good reason to bring me out in such a risky way. My legs were shaking as I walked, like I was an old man of 80 or 90. Seeing this, Grandpa's lips twitched. You're that weak? Hearing this, I nearly lost it. After what she put me through, even a bull would have been drained dry. I'm lucky to be alive at all. Grandson, it's not just luck. You have an unusual constitution. If it were an ordinary person facing a fierce ghost like Lu Rian, even 100 lives wouldn't be enough for her to drain. We finally reached the edge of the village, where only abandoned houses remained. The area was overgrown with weeds and in ruins. Grandpa stopped at the entrance of the village shrine. He pulled out a key and opened the door. Once we were inside, he quickly shut the door. Chongsheng, we'll spend the night in the shrine. He handed me the bundle. There's a set of clothes in here. Put them on right away. When I opened it, I realized it was burial clothing. Why does Grandpa want me to wear a dead man's clothes? As long as Lu Rian can't find your hiding place, she won't be able to find you tonight. I was thrilled to hear this. I never expected this burial clothing to be so useful. So I quickly put on the burial clothes Grandpa brought. At that moment, Grandpa shone his flashlight on the coffin in the shrine. You'll sleep in the coffin tonight. Hearing this, a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. Coffins are for the dead. Who would willingly sleep in one? But for the sake of survival, I clenched my teeth and went over, opened the coffin lid and lay inside. Grandpa came over and closed the lid for me. Chongsheng, no matter what kind of noise you hear in the shrine tonight, you mustn't climb out of the coffin. If Lu Rian finds you, not even I could save you no matter what. Don't be scared. Just sleep well tonight. I'll be in the coffin next to yours. Hearing this, I chuckled bitterly. If I can sleep with a ghost around, what's a coffin? That's the spirit of my grandson. Grandpa's face showed a look of pride. He patted my shoulder and lay down in the other coffin. Instantly the dark shrine was filled with a deathly silence. The atmosphere felt oppressive. Maybe I was too exhausted, because I soon fell asleep in the coffin. Of course, having Grandpa nearby also helped me sleep soundly. I don't know how long I slept, but I woke up needing to pee. When I rolled over to get out, a shiver ran down my spine. I realized I was lying in my own bed. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already 10:30 in the morning. I rubbed my head, looking bewildered. I wondered if I had slept until the next day, and Grandpa had just brought me home. I walked out of my room, but Grandpa wasn't around. Instead, I heard water running in the bathroom. I went over and pushed open the bathroom door, and to my surprise, there was a woman showering inside.